Whistle stop. Good, good, good.
And the rest of them, they know they're not.
Great. Are you all right to start? Good, well, hello everyone, welcome to Friday's report out. We've got some great stuff on today, really looking forward to it, so let's get into it. We're starting with Value Stream 4, RPIW 3, on scheduling, 60-day report out. So I'd like to invite Danny. Yeah. I think you're going to, and the team. Yeah. Excellent. To, if you could introduce yourself, Danny, that would be great.
Yeah, of course.
And then keen to hear what you've been doing.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Danny. I'm the business manager for Ophthalmology and the process owner for this report out we're doing.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm involved with the RWIP week. I'm a clerical officer in ophthalmology.
Hi, I'm Paula Hinchliffe. I'm a clerical officer in ophthalmology.
Yeah, so this is our 60-day report out, so it's 2 months since we first started doing this. Just to summarise what the project was, it's really small writing so you probably can't see. So we have issues with our corneal clinic scheduling. There's overbooking, there's a lot of waste in clinic, there's people walking around looking for equipment, etc, etc. So basically we spent the whole week and we spent the last 60 days trying to work on some ideas that we come up with in the initial week to try and prevent some of these wastages. So I'll just pass you through to Helen to talk about his target progress report.
Okay. We looked at measuring the lead time for a patient checking in to leaving the department. At the start, it was 43 minutes and 35 seconds. After 30 days, it was 37 minutes. Measurements done yesterday were 73 minutes. However, we only observed one patient, so we would expect this to be less. It was unfortunately 60% worse than at the beginning. The work in progress, we looked at the number of patients in the process at a specific time. So the baseline was 13 patients, and at 30 days it was down to 11 patients. Yesterday, when measured again, it was 9 patients. This was better by clinic. The baseline for that was 40 interruptions for 30 patients, which was 133%. At 30 days, we had 3 interruptions for 10 patients observed, which was 30%. And at 60 days, which we measured yesterday, we had 2 interruptions for 4 patients observed, which is 50%, but we didn't observe as many patients. However, this was better by 67%. Now Paula's going to talk about a few items from the newspaper.
So one of the first actions was our production board, which was a communication tool to help MDT members in clinic on the day to identify anything to assist the smooth running of the clinic. For example, which doctors had arrived on the day or any issues with any equipment on the day. This has been developed and started already, and we're just waiting for this fixing into permanent position. It's proved successful so far, and Jill and Diane have been really helpful in working to get this in action. The second item was clinic trolley setup, which is the equipment trolley, being set up in advance in an appropriate number of items from an agreed specified checklist. And Dionys has been working hard to get this up and running in clinic. Next is working really well, and it's getting some really good feedback from the doctors, and that's sort of saving on time that they were going out and looking for equipment while they were in a busy clinic. The third item is, what we did try, was a Kanban and alert card, which was used by junior doctors to alert a senior clinician that they needed assistance to discuss or review a patient. That again was to try and cut down on interruptions in clinic. We trialled this extensively, but we've had problems with it, and patient waiting times were starting to back up. So we're trying to think at the moment of a way to tweak this to see if we can get this or something similar back on track, but it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. So just a couple of barriers and key learnings really. So I saw this as, if somebody else were going to do one of these weeks, one of these projects, what sort of advice could we give to these people? So some of the barriers have come around making everyone aware of the project really. So I think we knew all about it, didn't we? And some of our extended teams did, but I don't think everybody in the department was quite aware. So they're kind of like, what are you guys doing here? Sort of thing. So it's communicating with a wider audience, I think. And definitely keeping people motivated after the initial week as well. I think everyone's all out for that first week, and then after that it's some people might relax a little bit, so they need a bit of a prod, and then somebody else to relax and they need a prod. So it's just trying to keep everyone's spirits up and make them, we are making a change here and a difference. And some key learnings: be realistic with his aims. Rome wasn't built in a day. We're not going to change everything overnight. Take feedback from staff and use it constructively. So they do a job every day. So if they've got anything that I think might improve anything that might tweak to make it better, let's listen to them, let's work together with them. And every adjustment makes a difference. No matter how small it is, if you can save a minute here, a minute there, it all adds up. If you've got a 30 patient clinic, you save an hour maybe. And just a couple of thank yous. To Chris Archer and the informatics team. So we had some issues with the printer. Doctors were going out, queuing up, waiting for printouts, going back to the room. And him and his team quickly sorted something, so we've got a printer in every room now, so that's made a massive difference. And a thank you to Diane and Jill for helping us with our arts and crafts skills for his production board. It's when it gets up and running officially, it's going to be really good and really useful. Thank you.
Great. Is that great? Well done. Thank you. Thank you very much, Danny, Helen, Paula. Are you coming back to do a 120 day?
We'll be doing 90 days.
You'll be doing it, of course, 90 day first,
yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, thank you, got me right. 90 days, and then, because what will be interesting then will be the observations you did yesterday, maybe getting a few more patients so we can see some of those, because you've done really good work on those areas. It'd be interesting to see how it's sort of impacting on your patients. But I'm getting into questions which we've got time for at the end, so I guess if everyone holds their questions for these guys, if you have them, we can pick them up. But well done, it's really good to see, and great to see the improvement method having a really good impact, so good stuff. Right, next up is the informatics team. Jackie and the team talking about the mobile PPM app.
Hi, I'm Jackie, I'm one of the CCIOs, and today Gareth, Andy and Stuart are going to talk about the mobile PPM app development and scan for safety.
Hi, I'm Andy Birch, so I'm Senior Business Analyst working on Scan for Safety and the PPM Plus mobile app.
I'm Gareth Edwards, Senior Project Nurse and the Clinical Safety Officer within Informatics.
And I'm Stuart Macmillan, I'm the Scan for Safety Programme Manager in the Trust. So briefly, Scan for Safety is effectively it's an effective patient management system that we're trying to implement across the Trust. And by means of doing that, we are implementing standards, practices and processes. One of the basic building blocks to that is we've rolled out across the Trust a new wristband, so every single wristband now printed in the Trust is printed in line with Department of Health and Social Care guidelines, and we've also printed out and deployed over 22,000 of the plaques that you'll have seen in all the rooms around the Trust, the little barcodes by the doors. The reason for that initially was to identify an approach for theatres about how we map products effectively to patients, so we can deliver better product recalls, better patient safety, improve supply chain efficiency, etc. But where that really highlighted an opportunity for this Trust particularly was if we can now know exactly who our patients are and where they are, with the identification of the locations, could we actually come up with a way of looking at a real-time bed state? Could we come up with an opportunity to know exactly where our patients are at all time within the Trust? So we obviously started to then work in collaboration with Informatics, and this was a joint venture to start to understand what that problem actually was, what the opportunities could be created. So we started working with some of the wards to identify the issues we had there, and it was quite clear the way we're working already that you would have patient care taking place for a number of patients and then potentially walking away to a laptop on wheels or desktop on wheels, and potentially aligning information with the wrong patient. We also had the issue that the patient may not even be in the right place in the first place, so when they're actually going to clinicians are going to do the ward round, how they actually make sure every time that the patient's in the place they need to be. So I'll hand over to identify how we address that.
So I guess us as in informatics, following from what Stuart said, we decided that the best way of doing that was to facilitate it through a mobile app that we could bring all these sort of elements together and enable scanning of standardised barcodes that are on the patient's wristband, that are on the locations that you may have seen dotted around the truss, that we've got all these barcodes plus up, using these GS1 standard barcodes. We wanted to be able to complete electronic forms at the bedside and otherwise, and we wanted to enable this real-time patient location tracking. So being able to scan a patient's wristband, scan the location, and have visibility of where that is. And we also wanted to provide this improved bed status management. So if we did scan someone into a bed, or we wanted to update the status of a bed at the point of being next to it using the mobile app, that we could do that. So this is the sort of mobile app in its current form. So the one on the left here is the dashboard. So if I scanned a patient's wristband, so if I just angled the app and scanned it using the camera, this is the dashboard that it would bring up. So from here we've got a number of options. So we've just recently embedded EOBs into this, so this will all form part of that. So we will be able to scan a patient's wristband and then be able to do their observations. Also to be able to do electronic forms at the bedside. But this main part that we were discussing earlier, update of location. So you can see here that it says bed 14, ward J23. And subtly, any of the barcodes around the truss, so it's involved quite a lot of collaboration with the state systems and things and integration, that we can then go and scan any of these barcodes and it updates our patient record to say where they are. This is one of the electronic forms, so this is the EOBS take observation form, so we would be able to do this just in the palm of our hand as well. That update of location then writes back to all of our electronic whiteboards if the column's switched on. So you can see here you've got a scanned location column. So this essentially, if a patient goes off to theatre, they go off to imaging, that we could just scan them in, and then the ward are fully aware of where the patient was in and the time that they got there. That's the next one. And what we're also doing is writing this into a patient timeline. So this then goes into single patient view and really tracking the patient's pathway all the way through their journey. So a patient like this has gone, so this is actually from a live patient's record that we anonymised, but they've gone from the waiting room to imaging, back to a waiting room, anaesthetic, theatre, recovery, and back to the bed on the ward. So you can clearly track the journey all the way through their pathway.
And this information is stored in the patient's record electronically and can be reviewed retrospectively. And I don't think you have to be a clinician to realise the value of that information, and particularly within investigating events, and particularly to my mind things like infection prevention and control incidents can be monitored through this information. What we've done with this app is we've taken it to Ward 23, which is the breast unit, and we started tracking patients there because their patients move through a defined pathway. They come in, they go to the breast imaging unit, they can often move to nuclear medicine, they'll go through theatres and a suite of theatres that's contained within 23 and then back out onto the ward, and we can track the patient through all of that movement. It's had several benefits in that knowing that when a relative rings up that can you tell me where Mrs. Smith is, I can instantly turn around to a board and see that this gentleman's wife is already in recovery and she arrived there 5 minutes ago, and I can give him the information immediately that I anticipate your wife will be out onto the ward in 15 minutes, is obviously much better than having to go walking off to recovery, going to theatre, find out where the patient is. We found that it's instantly cut down on anybody who knows the layout of where nuclear medicine is, which is in this wing, and patients have to walk from Chancellor Wing over to this wing, and often they found patients were getting lost. They weren't sure where patients were at any particular time. There was a lot of phone calls going backwards and forwards to say, has Mrs. Smith arrived in nuclear medicine? We've cut all of that out, thankfully, and they've got a really good knowledge of where their patients actually are. One of the things it's also done, as Andy was mentioning, is enable positive identification of patients. I can scan a wristband, complete my falls assessment or whatever nursing documentation, or create an annotation against that patient, knowing I'm entering into that patient's record. The things that we've learnt already are you've got to give staff the correct devices, that it's no good giving somebody an iPad of this size to scan patients in a clinic when in actual fact what they all want is an iPad mini because it's so much easier to get in your pocket and things like that. There's lots of, might seem obvious now, but we've learned as we've gone on. Ensuring patients are aware of what we're doing and the reasons why, and illustrating to them the benefits have been really important to ensure that they don't feel like, as the patient said, you know, you're scanning me, but what are you actually doing with this information? So we have to make that really explicit. And what we've actually got here is a quote from Jill, the senior sister on the ward, and she's illustrating that the benefits have been quite immediate for them, in that knowing where people are is actually really important information. And as we've got here, what we're going to do as we move on, as Andy's already mentioned, is incorporate the EOB system. So we're going to hopefully reduce incidents where information might be recorded against the wrong patient, and that should eliminate that.
Yeah, so as Gareth was just saying, we just want to be bringing this into sort of daily use, where you're just getting used to and familiar with scanning the patient wristband. We do use it in some of the other systems, but it is being used more and more, and I know that apps like Forward Health will do that the same. We're also building PAS functionality into the PPM Plus mobile app. So what we're actually trying to enable is that when we do update a location, this patient's appeared in a different ward and we're scanning them in, but actually, is this a ward transfer? And being able to just send PAS a message and say this patient's transferred from one ward to another, or this patient's just here for a scan, we don't want to perform any PAS activity. And ultimately be able to do admission and discharge through the mobile app, through PPM Plus. We're also releasing a lot more electronic forms as we go around. There's already nursing documentation being released to some of the wards. I think there's about 30 live at the moment. And there'll be more forms being released over the coming releases as well.
And then the final piece there is we, obviously now with the capability that we've got with it within the mobile app, the ability to scan information and read it, we're starting to work again collaboratively on how do we bring further use cases into that. So one of those is the products. How do we start to actually automatically capture the information of a product that's used to that patient? So that could potentially be used for their EDAN or their op note to try and take some of that reporting time away from clinicians, actually automate it and make the process smoother. Obviously the big piece of that puzzle is the improved reporting itself, so we're now starting to collect much more information, building on what PPM Plus can already do, and bring that into some dashboards about how can we actually bring about some real clinical variation for this. And anecdotally, I actually had a call from a ophthalmology clinician this morning that was talking about, well, I've heard about this. How do we actually look at, we know what products we want to use on the patient in the upcoming procedure. How do we put some kind of verification in to make sure that we're using the right product? So you could start to look at eliminating the sort of wrong site never events and things like that. So it's really starting to grow momentum now as we've developed the app out.
Great. Done? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks very much, Andy, Gareth, Stuart. It's exciting stuff, this. It's really kind of great example, isn't it, of how technology's serving us in the interests of patient safety, quality, and all the benefits that will bring. So thank you for coming to present, and I'm sure colleagues will have some questions at the end for you. Okay, great. Next, we've got the Elective Orthopedics team. So, Ruth, are you going to come and introduce? Yeah, excellent.
So as part of the elective orthopaedic work that we're doing at Leeds, we've joined the Quist Surgical Collaborative across the UK, looking at essentially some patient quality and safety outcomes in orthopaedics patients, looking at infection, prevention, control and anemia. We had our first meeting down in London a few weeks ago. We joined a lot of hospitals from around the UK. We all completed storyboards about our current metrics, our practices, etc. And then Leeds were chosen to be the only hospital that actually presented at that meeting with some of our outcomes, etc. So that was a really good place for us to start from on this work. So I just want to introduce Sharon Ferdinandis, our orthopedic nurse specialist for patient outcomes, and she's just going to take you through the presentation that we took to London a few weeks ago. Thank you.
Hello. So my name's Sharon Ferdinandis. So this is the presentation that we took down. We actually took with us a really good team. We've got Professor Hemant Pandit, who is our Professor in Residence and Principal Investigator for this project. Myself and Jill Drake, the pre-assessment sister. We've got a designated orthopaedic pre-assessment team at Chapel Allerton Hospital. Gabby Legg is our information analyst who's come and helped with some of our metrics. Richard Dalton, our matron, and of course Ruth too. There were lots of trusts from all over across the country, so we just quickly ran through a little bit of background about the Leeds Teaching Hospital, that we've got a dedicated elective unit which is off the main site. A lot of our surgeons work closely in collaboration with the trauma services. We always aim to provide a kind of one-stop shop for pre-assessment wherever possible, and we do have 4 dedicated orthopaedic theatres, all with laminar flow. And for a long time, we've always done same-day admission wherever possible. That's Chapel Allerton.
Thanks.
So what they asked us, what were our current MRSA guidelines, and they asked everybody that was attended there. There was quite a lot of variation. So at Chapel Allerton Hospital, as per Leeds policy, all our patients are screened for MRSA. All our patients have 5 days decolonisation. There's a body wash. And all our patients are also given a nose cream to use as well. If any of our patients are MRSA positive, then we will treat them accordingly, and we will rescreen them, and we will rescreen them, and we will rescreen them a 3rd time. We want to know that we've done everything that we can before we offer surgery. Currently, we don't screen for MSSA, which is one of the focus of the collaborative, asking whether we should. They asked us for our infection rate. So this data set is from in-house collection. The ward will declare, as per Public Health England SSI guidelines, whether there's an infection or discharge. My team, we contact the patient at day 30 and we do the post-discharge follow-ups via telephone, at which point we can also gather other information relating to readmissions, ultrasound scans, DVT. So our data set for 2017, as per Public Health England guidelines, for total hip replacement, our infection rate is 0.6%, and for our knee replacements, 0.5%. As per guidelines, anybody with an implant infection is reportable for a year following surgery. So this is 2017, so those figures might change as the year goes on. They asked about our transfusion rates. We had a little bit of trouble getting this information, but Richard Dalton did some investigative work and he managed to get the data. We actually only had 13 patients that were hip replacements or knee replacements that were transfused in a year period, which puts our transfusion rate at 1.3%. We don't have a pre-assessment policy about monitoring haemoglobin levels and whether the patient's fit for surgery. Each patient is discussed with the anaesthetist and appropriate treatment plans are made. But we do have our Leeds Trust policy about when to transfuse. Asked us about our length of stay. Again, this is from the in-house data set for 2017. I like mode. I chose mode length of stay for hip replacements is 2 days, but obviously our median length of stay is 3 days, our average length of stay is 3.75 days. And again, our length of stay for knee replacement, our mode is 2 days, but our median length of stay is 3, and our average length of stay is 4.8 days. So these are very much benchmarks, so that all the trusts can benchmark against each other. They asked us about critical care admissions, and I think a lot of trusts had a lot of trouble sort of classifying what they were actually asking. It was easy for us, we're a peripheral site. If any patient has an event, then they get blue lighted to the main site. So we chose to report on all our transfers out. The data set comes from a governance and audit meeting. If any patient is transferred out, we talk about it at governance, we look at what happened and reflect on the patient's story as to whether we could have done anything better. So our transfers out from April to March 2018, there were 7 transfers out, which if you want a percentage is 0.82%. And we just identified actually where those patients went to. Our readmission rate is taken from our in-house data set for 2017. Very simple chart, but for total hip replacement, 4.7%, and for knee replacement, 3%. And I think we can do a little bit more work around that. They were asking us what we were hoping to get out of the project. And as ever, we always want to improve patient experience and outcomes. Always nice to reduce any infection rates. Transfusion rate, with our benchmark, we thought we might possibly be able to get it down to 0 with the pre-optimization of anemic patients before surgery. And I'm sure all of that would be actually reflected in our length of stay. We're always endeavouring to minimise the number of cancellations and readmissions. And there's quite a national push to consider day case surgery for hip and knee replacement. So maybe at the end, this is a 2-year project, a year looking at infection, a year looking at anemia. We hope we can get some evidence-based protocols for the management of preoperative anemia. And we hope to contribute to the data set. Everybody will put in data. Some trusts will be screening for MSSA, some trusts will just be sticking to their existing policy and putting the data in, which will then be analysed for the outcomes of the project. We would like to reduce length of stay, infection rate and readmission rates, and hopefully we can work with the Wyatt and the national teams and introduce best practice across the region. A number of things getting in the way. Because we're a single site, we do all the ASA grades at Chapel Allerton Hospital. I'm aware that other hospitals might have different sites for different ASA grades, and I think that might be reflected in the data. But talking to the MDT, reasons for prolonged length of stay at the moment are social reasons, independence with mobility, and leaky wounds. These are not infected wounds, they're just leaky wounds. We like to know that the leaking's settled down before we discharge a patient. So there's quite a lot of work going on here over the next couple of years. So we'll work as a team at Chapel Allerton. There'll be lots of data collection, lots of data entry, but we've got a fantastic team, and I'm sure everybody will be really excited to join in. There's a launch event coming up shortly, and the quiz programme, they're very organised. There's different events across the country which we'll attend, where we can all share how we're doing and benchmark with each other. It's the professors. Thank you.
Great. Great. Well done, Sharon. That's excellent. Thank you very much for doing that all on your own as well. Well done. And really good to see us involved in this and leading the way nationally at this level on such an important programme that will make, I'm sure, a big impact for our patients, and the importance of infection and reducing it, eliminating it where we can in orthopedics is vital, isn't it? So that's terrific. And I'm sure colleagues will have questions for you at the end, so we'll make time for that. Right, great. Next up, Adrian, a regular attender here. Good to see you again, Adrian. You're going to talk to us today about advanced lean training.
Fantastic, thank you. So this is the presentation, right? Hello, my name is Adrian Moore, and I'll go to the first slide. So I'm a biochemist by trade, but I'm clinical lead for blood sciences and deputy CD for pathology. I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour through advanced lean training. So obviously we're always given challenges. This is quite a long program for those that haven't done it, where you get a lot of assignments. So 12 assignments in total over a period of 9 weeks. Now obviously I don't have time to go through that, but essentially it all relates back to the Virginia Mason House, which obviously we'll be adopting within Leeds, hopefully in the not too distant future. You can see that I'm going to focus on peak analysis, level production and standard ops, just as a real whistle-stop tour. So, just to provide some context, within blood sciences we aim to get all U's and E's and LFTs, full blood counts, troponins from the emergency department through within an hour. And so what this is, it's kind of akin to an ambulance on a busy road. So everybody's trying to get to the same destination, it's just some need to get there a little bit quicker. Now, within the trust, and there'll be people hopefully in this room that appreciate this, is that everybody wants their results 10 minutes ago. Andy Webster is smiling at the back. So you can pick on those that are nodding their head on. So, the total testing process, this is it. Now essentially there's only certain things that we have control over, but essentially it goes through the whole process from when the clinician decides to request some tests, all the way through to us producing that report on that patient. Now, the boxes in green, those are the bits that we have control over. And anybody that went to my report at Leeds Leaders, they'll know that I focused on that for my project, for that particular learning. So then what I tried to do for the advanced lean training was go upstream. And so what I did there is I didn't know that A&E Live was going to happen, so I did my preliminary, and obviously the presenter was decidedly more ugly than Davina, but there you go. So I went and I got onto A&E, and I've got to say that I absolutely adore the staff in A&E, and the A&E Live absolutely reinforced that. I'll put up here 2 people, so Gemma and Violetta down at LGI, but there was all the staff involved, and what my observations showed is that you can see that it's really patient-centred. So you see here, the red line, that represents the patients that were coming in. The yellow lines was our staff. Now what you can see there, we obviously want the patient to have the best experience, but what the reality was and what my data showed was that the staff were off, going getting bits of kit from all over the place. And if they'd have had a little Fitbit on, I dare say that they would have clocked up double figures of miles during the course of their shift. But these are the tools. And the reason why I put this up is because I want to try and reinforce, what's absolutely pleasing about this is that having a meeting with pharmacy and oncology right before this meeting, we're discussing how to use these tools. Anybody that remembers The Simpsons from a few years ago when Bart goes to Australia, it goes through the middle and you see the person spinning all the plates, that's what it was akin to. And you could see that what I learned from that process was that we had staff absolutely delivering a fantastic service, but there was little bits of waste in the system that we could iron out. Okay, so this was the value stream map, the standard work in progress, and that was my learning from it. You could see that the process was very good, but you had a lot of plate spinning going on in there that impacted on our ability to get those patients through as quick as we possibly could. Obviously, the ECS is something that the trust is very keen. So the next thing, it was funny, in the ALT training now, everybody was petrified of PQ analysis, product quantity analysis, and levelling. Little side that you get in the advanced lean training is you get a crash course in Japanese, so if ever you want to go there. And what you do there is you understand, and understand your business. And what was really fantastic learning for me was that I think there's so much variation in the system. I'm constantly moaning about people misusing lab services, blah, blah, blah. When you strip it all back, you've actually got just a few product families in there, and that's what our daily workload looks like. So we do between 9,000 and 10,000 samples a day at LTHT. But once you strip out back to its product family, this is the kind of thing that you see. And a real fantastic learning for me. So more than 80% of our work was the serum tubes and the full blood count tubes and how they feed in. And this, as you probably won't be surprised to learn, this is where the time is taken. We let machines do the majority of it, and the time that we have to invest is in the variations, the esoterics and things like that. So it really opened my eyes to that. And then what really was an epiphany for me, and seeing it when laid out bare like this is our workload over a 24-hour period. And you'd like to think that you want to level that production off. Now we're very much a push organisation. You know, you send us samples. I can't say, oh, can you send me that sample now? It's at the behest of the patient. But what you can see here, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, this is done totally respectfully, as we always do in any of our learnings. This is the work that didn't get done the day before. That's when everyone goes for the dinner. That's when everyone goes for the tea. And that's when everyone goes home. And it's those little things, you know, the real, when you see it laid out like that, we've got to match the workforce to the work. And that's something that I'm on there. Okay, so learnings. I think I've already had my signal, so I need to get off the stage. Pathology services really are geared up for this. You know, we are very much process driven, so I want to try and make it a little bit more prescriptive within our domain to get people through these courses. The tools are easy to use. Anyone that's here doing lean for leaders or advanced lean training, promise you that practice does make perfect. Absolutely tons of waste right under our noses, and it's having those fresh eyes, you know, to go and see what is out there. And people always want to work smarter, not harder, and that's always been my message. That's it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. You want to, and it's a pleasure and an honour at this point, Adrian, after that fantastic sort of summary of all the work, and behind all of that, I know a huge amount of work has gone into that, but to present you with your certificate for advanced lean training, so congratulations. So at this point, if I could ask those of you that have reported out just to come to the front, because we're going to get some good Q&A going, because we've got a little bit of time to do that. So those of you that have been up here, just come back up and we'll get some questions going. And just as a reminder, we started with Danny and the team on scheduling in ophthalmology, 60-day report out, and some really good progress there. We had informatics with Andy, Gareth, Stuart, and the really important contribution that Scan for Safety is making in the mobile application of that. Elective Orthopedics and the impressive work we're doing and that Sharon took us through, and then obviously Adrian talking about what we're doing in blood sciences and the advanced lean training and how you've applied that to the process, Adrian, which is giving us really promising results in terms of speed and timeliness going back into ED and so on. So, who would like to kick off with a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Anna Winfield. I just wanted to say thank you very much for your presentation. It's been really interesting. Just to the Scan for Safety team, as a doctor, I can see how that would be so helpful to know where your patients are. And I know that just as an aside, one of the porters are quite concerned at the moment. I work with them for their safety levels about when the patient's put on carts to transfer to a different ward, and they might just say bed 12, can we take them to X-ray or to theatre, or Mr. Jones, there's obviously lots of Mr. Joneses about. But do you think Scan for Safety might provide a solution for that, because they're very worried about taking the wrong patient to the wrong
One of the first bits of feedback we got was they should interact with CAPS as a way of positively identifying. You've looked into it a bit, haven't you, Andy?
Yeah, it is quite a complicated piece of work, but it's something that we're trying to prioritise, but we've got to work with various other departments who run that sort of software to make sure that it'll all work and piece together. And at the moment there's some updates that need to be done to that. Obviously the positive identification of the patient when they arrive at the ward, and the fact that we can scan them into a particular location, hopefully that will help them with that.
And I think it's also about respect for patients as well, because being known as bed 12, we want to get away from that sort of thing. It's about using hello, my name. Thank you, I'll feed that back to them. They'll be very happy.
That's great, Anna, thank you. And an important point about how we, there is the hello, my name is the personalisation of care. So yeah, great, okay. Other questions? On any of the,
Hi, same team again. I'm Carol Carwood, I'm a public health registrar on placement here, but I also do on-calls for the health protection team at Public Health England. And I know you mentioned about infection control. You may have already, I might have missed this, but when we're out of hours, we quite often get calls from hospitals across the region about people who have attended hospital settings, often ED or assessment units with an infectious disease, TB, measles, things like that. And we're asked about contact tracing so that we can do risk assessments and take any public health action that's needed. Do you see a role for the mobile patient app in sort of facilitating contact tracing? Because it lands with, depending on which hospital it is, it might be the microbiologist, the infection control team, it may be us. And especially out of hours, it can be quite hard to work out where a patient has been and therefore who could be at risk of infection transmission. So I can see a potential role for that, but I don't know what sort of settings you might be using it in.
I don't think anyone's jumping forward to answer that. It's a very good point, and I think what we found with every time we open up the floor with conversations about what we are doing now, to your point, it opens up what are the future opportunities for this. So in my head, there's no reason why we can't do that, because as Gareth touched on in the presentation, we will start to get an identification of where the patient's gone on their journey. And if that was an infectious patient, we'll start to get that information. But I think it's safe to say that that's part of a much longer journey that we're on, and it's definitely something we can feed back into the cycle of development. But I don't want to make any promises right now, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Thanks, Stuart. Okay, thank you. Helen?
It was two comments actually. One to Adrian. Adrian represents the second person at LTH2 who's now acquired the two highest levels of training in the Leeds improvement method. He went through Lean for Leaders first and completed, and he's been through advanced Lean training. So number 2 in the organisation, Adrian, well done. Jill Dennis was the first. And my other comment is to Danny. So when he adopted the role of process owner in this particular RPIW, he fundamentally took on a different role in the creation of the work that required to be done. We've normally prescribed it as KPO to a process owner. Danny supported the write-up and delivery of what that was, and it's been really clear throughout this process that Danny and the team have properly taken on that on board because they owned it from the beginning, and I just felt that was something that needed saying here today, so very well done.
Thank you for reinforcing that, Helen, that's really good to hear. Well done. Time for just maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Hi, so my name is Becky, I'm one of the service managers in adult therapies. As part of my Lean for Leaders project, we've been looking at data collection around sort of therapy hours per patient, and there's a certain number of hours that we need to deliver to our patients to meet sort of national standards for therapy. Is that something that PPM, we might be able to look at, kind of scanning a patient, scanning a physio, or scanning a patient and a different therapist or a nurse even for contact hours, so we can demonstrate how much care a patient's getting?
Again, it's very much on the radar, and one of the possibilities we've seen from the very beginning is about being able to sort of pull that data, like you say, of how much time we're spending with patients or in doing other things. But there are a number of issues around how we actually get there. They've obviously got to work through first, but yes, it's one of the things we've identified.
Brilliant.
I think, Becky, what's encouraging is, that you can obviously see the applications of this, and also what you were saying, Carol, about the public health as well, that there's probably enormous potential in all of this, but there is a sort of a bit of walk before we run, isn't there, with kind of embedding and developing it in the work that you guys are doing to...
Well, took it to the ward. The first thing they did was pull back all this feedback. Wouldn't it be good if it did? And we've like you said.
So but I think I think there's no doubt we will be able to get into some of this, and the work that I know you're doing with colleagues on 23 is really promising, and we have been given 15 million to do scan for safety across the whole of West Yorkshire that we're leading. So that's another big opportunity for us. But nevertheless, I think it's been fairly, at this stage, fairly sort of constant on priorities, isn't it? And making sure we cement the foundations of this, and not try and do too much too soon. and lose some of the impact. So it's a judgment and a balance, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I've no doubt we want the enthusiasm and ideas from you guys like that to see where we can take this. Yeah.
Well, I mentioned to Jackie yesterday, I've got a whiteboard in the office probably similar to one of these screens, and every one of these things we just keep writing more and more down, because the opportunities are endless.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, last question. Go on, Anna.
Sorry, Anna, just to the orthopedic team, again, thank you for your presentation. I thought it was really interesting. It was really good to see you use data for improvement, so run charts in your presentation, so you could clearly see over time if your length of stay is going to change. So I was just going to offer some advice in that you're already doing it, but having a data analyst as part of your improvement team. We found Craig being involved in our deteriorating patient collaborative, and the Befall's work has been so crucial. So having I think you mentioned that you have a data analyst as part of your team.
Yeah.
So producing those run charts to be able to see if you're making an improvement or not is so crucial. So I definitely make sure that they stick with you, and if you need any help with this data side of stuff, myself and Ali can help with that as well.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for the offer, and I'm sure, Sharon, that you'll be able to use support from other colleagues and continue to build on the excellent work that you're doing. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. All right. So that brings us to the end of Report Out for today. Can I just say thank you to all of you for coming along to support your teams, coming along to see what improvement work we're doing. It's great to see the range and scope, and just taking today the sort of the different work that's going on across a whole different parts of the trust, but also different kind of approaches and use of technology, and but all of it has this focus on benefits and value to patients, which defines a kind of Leeds improvement method, and that is fantastic. So well done to all of you for reporting out today. I really appreciate you coming along and sharing the work. Thank you to all of you for coming, and let's give these guys one more round of applause. Of course.
Laminated. Why are you not laminated? Maybe. Yeah, 5S my desk the other day. Oh, yeah. I did.